Hey guys, I'm here to get into one of Quentin Tarantino's greatest masterpieces, Inglourious Basterds. And I mean, I love this film when I first saw it growing up, but then I think I get challenged by it at times once I step away because sometimes the emotions and feelings that this film takes you through almost feels borderline too juvenile at times. I feel like I almost want to scout, but then I realize, okay, that might be where I could stand to grow because, well, this is how people get when they're in the depths of this stuff. So realistically, I look at myself and I'm like, okay, I'm capable of being as crazy as some of the, like, not the Nazis obviously, but the like the bastards. Literally, like some of them are literally just insane, like psychotic how bad they want vengeance, basically. And I think that's a very terrifying like place to be. But this is a Tarantino's made to get straight right into it. I mean, this is a world where nothing is safe, and I feels like honestly, this film is almost just reaching for an intense love for pure raw expression in cinema. Within just madness and chaos, and literally death. And this is literally writing history, and I think this is what challenges about *Inglourious Basterds*. I think Quentin Tarantino invented a new language with his three films that he's made lately. It's like this one, Django Unchained, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is just reinventing history and then reinterpreting it into something of a modern fable, which ends up being kind of like his original way of being like a peacemaker and actually paying tribute towards what happened by literally like showing like this is what it could have been to all the family members. And it seems, it typically comes around, and most people love and appreciate how Quentin Tarantino is going kind of hard about it because this is what it felt like to be in the face of it in a lot of ways. Like I think but he's like over the top about it, but in a cinematic sense, he wants to take you through the universal sense of like, okay, like this is what tragedy feels like. This is what the hardship feels like. And this is the biggest in budget and scope Quentin Tarantino's ever been by far. I mean, he really came back strong after taking a hiatus after Kill Bill making Death, but I think he has like refinanced and he literally just made his own language here for his latest films. They're all 5-star masterpieces. This is the first one of that. And again, I think it was like ahead of me in a lot of ways when I first saw it because I saw this around the time I saw like Schindler's List. I was like 17 when I saw both of those, and I love Schindler's List. I think I love that one more at first, but now I love this better because I think it certainly goes way more for how I like to look at a lot of the history stuff. And maybe in the end of the day, like you always know in heart that it happened, but in the universal sense, it's always good to see like the peacemaker senses to move on, and just sort of have let a catharsis out by way of watching all this and just sort of feeling all right whenever after you've really been in the depth of tragedy too long. Just taking it all too seriously all the time really is exhausting in a sense. And Inglourious Basterds just kind of making a statement about that, as well as just like maybe that's the level of passion that people are literally putting in as a film director. Because this feels like an intensely most personal statement Quentin Tarantino has ever made his entire filmography. Like it feels like the most personal film. But I say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood actually outdid it, but this is very, very close because you're the whole way through. I mean, it's literally building up to people going to to the cinema. So it's like, and all these characters almost just you can almost just feel like, well, there's nothing but violence otherwise. So it feels like fantasy and escapism by way of film is all they have. So building up to it, while they're literally constant violence, literally there, and it's making a satire statement about a lot of violence in a lot of ways. I think that's what I needed to grow me about this film more and more with age. It's like this is literally a satire, and I think the things that frustrate me about it are just being very honest about. Like we all have this in us demons, you could say. It's people right on the living right on the. Even Brad Pitt's intense, how they're rated. I mean, he's really, really intense, but really, really like a really intense hero, you could say. The most, he's a man who's been through it all, but he like literally always reigns in his way, and it's awesome the way it's portrayed. Literally, it's portraying the most harshest steps of evil in a way that's awesome. I think that's what feels juvenile about it. But honestly, the more I look at it, I'm like, okay, well, people who actually, see this and have some kind of particular any kind of connection, well, is kind of thankful just to see like, well, this is what it could have been, and that's the idea of film in a lot of ways is to feel catharsis, and just like this is what you deserve, and I mean. And it's almost trying to challenge you by like, look at you as a viewer. Are you going to sit here and chant whenever all the intense violence is happening? And for me, it's no, big time. Quentin Tarantino makes it very subtly clear, like by way of nature. And I think Quentin Tarantino was extremely challenged by Paul Thomas Anderson when he made There'll Be Blood, because he saw that. I think he literally felt like he was watching the best film ever made. So he's like, that like actually challenged his ego whenever he was making Inglourious Basterds. So that was in the back of his mind. I think he was out to portray nature in a similar kind of way where it's just like nature's beautiful but men are crazy. But this is perhaps the most like nature beautiful centric film I've Quentin Tarantino ever made. Like cinematography wise, this is like next to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is his best, I feel like. Perhaps the most entertaining as well. But I mean, this is just the background it explores just absolute evil. I mean, just the post World War II world, and it's just treated very much like a gangster film, literally. Like it treats war like gangster film. Like that's what's very original about it. It's just it's a world where you can kind of warp that in a storytelling mode and just let violence kind of just play as it should have played, basically, as fate would in a better world would have played. That's what this Django Unchained and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are all doing. In a better world, this is what would have happened. Like, so Quentin Tarantino has a very original way of laying that out with very incredible characters. Always, not every single one's even like a deep and layered one, but I think this film is more like on the sitting back and looking at just intense stuff. Like that's what this film feels like to me. I think it's the ultimate just sitting down, looking at a film and just feeling like, okay, this is where I, almost don't feel like want to be at right now because it's like the acts are so intense. At the same time, that very intensity. Good to know that intensity was necessary in order to triumph evil. That's what Quentin Tarantino's out to convey. And it. The thing is, the film. I think there is a juvenile tone to it. I think this is again a good juvenile. Again, much like how Paul Thomas Anderson had that view of death. This is like almost a juvenile view on violence, but I think viewing that is seeing a heroism in the end within that juvenile energy. I think that's the thing. And I think that's the modern foundation of like excellent storytelling. It's literally just the challenging protagonist, where at first you just kind of are questioning his motives. You don't know where his head's at exactly, but in the end you come to a conclusion. All right, he's all right. It's all right. Because again, this is almost just like sort of a warped kind of take on violence, and the reason why you have to make violence is because violence is really out there. So it's like to suppress your demons is to never do anything about it. So sometimes to look at your demons is literally a motive to get something done. This film is really a powerful take on all that. So I mean, this is absolute evil being played out, and I mean this is. Yeah, I mean, it certainly grows on me more in time. I think it's doing a lot of nihilism with that, like an Apocalypse Now level of nihilism. But this is Quentin Tarantino's kind of take on an Apocalypse Now kind of scenario, you could say. Definitely Tarantino doing what he does best, which is I think all the best records. You take about 50 masterpiece scenes, just jumble them together, paste it together, and then just write it. And this is like just a fantastic screenplay. So. Yeah, I think Inglourious Basterds is a film that holds up to me as perhaps, and I think what Tarantino's doing here is perhaps the best because it's like literally almost combining the essence and love of history, like Paul Thomas Anderson does, with just an awe and fascination of bringing that to a pulpy modern sense. Taking influence from all like pop art. That's come like a lot of French New Wave influence. Honestly, is going into it because a lot of this is very jumbled. It feels like, but all the scenes play out. It just feels like it's such a complete experience, and it really feels like it's just its own language entirely. Literally, I think Quentin Tarantino wrote his own language of film with this film. It's quite a genius masterpiece what it's doing. Again, I think some of the most eccentric, crazy characters. You have like almost, like I said, almost irritating. I think that's the way I can almost feel when I watch. It's like Eli Roth is almost an irritating character. So was Mike Myers, but at the same time, they fascinate me because that's like, well, that's the world that they're in. It's a product of their environment. Kind of thing. So it's like. Again, it's just about the best anti-Nazi propaganda film ever made. I mean, I think, and it's just rewriting history and portraying just brutal violence in a way that is, well, it's necessary when you're in the face of absolute evil, absolute destruction. You have to have that. So that's Quentin Tarantino building his ego up, I think, a lot. Because again, I think he was really, really challenged by the film There Will Be Blood. How perfect that was at laying it all out in the way what Tarantino wants to do. I think he ultimately met that with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That changed Paul Thomas Anderson's life. So he's just happy if that happens. It's awesome. Yeah, they have an very interesting kind of dynamic. They really fascinate me. It's like in the 90s, they were like, young, hotshot filmmakers. And apparently when they hung out together, rumor has it, they were pretty irritating to be around. So I imagine their egos were insane when they were hanging out. So. But then they like kind of mellow and chill out, become like just cooler, friendlier in the 2000s, 2010s. You can kind of tell like Quentin Tarantino's a little more on the gritty, and Paul Thomas Anderson's definitely more on the modest like contrast. But I think in the end, they both are equally perfect directors. I slightly, I mean, really, they're just equally perfect directors. I think it's an equal force all around. I think Quentin Tarantino is the best man of balancing style and substance. Well, so is Paul Thomas Anderson. That's what those two are ultimate modern geniuses at. The balance of style and substance in storytelling and filmmaking. What makes the essence of filmmaking? Why does this need to be a film and nothing else? These directors are almost a walking force of why. It's like, once in a lot of their later masterpieces, particularly, it's just like, yeah, this can't be read. This has to be felt by way of filmmaking. Storytelling, the best kind of way, So I mean, of course, it's really cool to see this foundation of this loose trilogy because the Django Unchained, it's like the storytelling is actually a little more mature, and I'll get into that too. That's equally perfect. I realized that had to grow up a lot. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood instantly hit me as the best film, perhaps. And I realized to this day it is my favorite Quentin Tarantino film. It's even more slightly by the smallest of hairs of Pulp Fiction. It's so close. I'll get into all those. I mean, yeah, this is really a masterpiece, the entire way through. It's really perfect. Best film to come out of 2009. I used to say a serious because I used to think like, oh yeah, that's a more mature film. But you know what? I think I need this film. This film's more important and groundbreaking now. So the world's pretty immature in a lot of ways. I think that to be able to embrace your own immaturity in a sense, but then able to bring it out in a way that ultimately is rewarding, satisfying, fulfilling, you could say, because it's actually triumphing evil in a sense. So. And I think Quentin Tarantino is almost seeing film as an ultimate weapon of being able to take people through such a thing. It's really a fascinating and experimental concept. I mean, this really could have been, and I believe it was. I believe this was quite divisive when it first came out. I remember a lot of people not hating this film. I remember reading like this is, and I can see why. Because it's very abrasive. It's a brutal film. It's not about as subtle as a sledgehammer, like and its message. Although I think the scenes and moments play out in such Quentin Tarantino fashion because the violence is very loud. But honestly, 80% of the film is just really deep dialogue. I mean, I think all the violence is just there to kind of like get every emotion for it. It's very raw and loud, but I think that the dialogue is really just in the moment. And I mean, there's just like all these scenes. It just takes you all over the place. Inglourious Basterds is like a giant carnival ride. You're just going through all these scenarios. You're just taking through all these strange moments as they play out. And I mean, yeah, this is, I think, really the best Quentin Tarantino's ever been since Jackie Brown. Like literally, this is like him right up on the 90s. And I didn't always see this growing up. That's the thing. It's had to grow on me, this whole thing. But it's just the more I kind of just look at that idea of nihilism and just you get to that point because there's a point post, embrace like feeling depressed about all the horrors out in the world where you have the nihilism when you like get into it you can kind of have a sense of dark comedy about a lot of things because that's a sense of moving on, being at peace. And I think this film is a really great, and I'm realizing these films are actually perfect foundation to doing that. So I think Quentin Tarantino is a modern genius. So I mean, geez, and of course, like it's just Christoph Waltz, the incredible discovery of this evil man. I mean, evil bastard. Like Quentin Tarantino literally writes this evil to perfection with this character. It literally is just something. And Brad Pitt, I'm just stunned by Brad Pitt's force of dominating force. That's good. And I think that's the thing. I'm intimidated by the amount of dominance, going into all this, but that's all the good, that some of that's going to good. Like that's the thing. It's just is, and even if you don't want to like it, you have to see that. Like, okay, wow, that was awesome. What they ultimately did in a strange kind of way. That's Quentin Tarantino. Like he kind of has a fictionalized way of telling a truly harsh reality. Yeah, I mean, this really is a perfect film, and it just gets better with time. I'm really thankful this came out when I was growing up in a lot of ways. I remember watching this, I was like 15 years old. I think I was too absorbed in the Pulp Fiction, so I just wanted 90s Quentin Tarantino. But I realized, okay, this is just different. Quentin Tarantino is evolved. Like, he's grown up. It's not really grown up. I mean, he's always got this kind of, in a good, the best way possible. Like there is like a bit of a juvenile outlook, which I have to see in myself as a filmmaker, because it's like, yeah, there is a juvenile component to it that often goes unseen, and that's always it right there. But this is to kind of be able to just look at that and look at it in yourself. So it's like I don't want to act this way really, but I also don't want to deny that it's there because that's one kind of a great foundation really comes down to. It's like being able to just look at something you're terrified of and just ultimately feel fascinated by it, rather than feeling like they're disrupting peace completely. I mean, that's just the basis right there. I mean, it's like an intense cult necessary, to all this. I mean, the David Bowie score is perfect. I love all that. The way the whole ending plays out. I mean, it really is just like a perfect revenge fantasy. It's revenge. It's taking influence from like a lot of like the 70s, best of 70s films. Really, it's just again like just I think the ability to be able to do that is just really incredible. And again, the writing here, it's funny. This is a really great dark. It's ultimately a dark comedy. Like it's laughing at tragedy, and that's the original thing to do. Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting about this film and a lot of Quentin Tarantino films. When they first came out, they were very divisive, but then give it some time. Now it's like it feels like it's universally praised in a way. I feel like everyone kind of who sees these films ends up seeing the timeless status of it. I think that definitely makes Quentin Tarantino the most iconic modern director. I mean, so he's the hotshot. He's the ultimate star. So it's like, Yeah, I'm curious what his last film's going to be. I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood feels like his conclusion. That feels like the film he filled his entire career going up to here. But this comes close because this is just, I think, just Quentin Tarantino really getting into the depths of serious subject matter. Because you can always think more down to earth just talking about evil rather than really like going into like these seriously horrible things in the real world. This is the first time he's really done that. So it's like, I think he wants to combine that with his love and passion for film and be able to just kind of do something with that. So it's like a very eccentric experience, I would say. That's the best way I can describe. Because it's, again, like for a war film, it's just talk. Like this is hardly even. It feels like nothing like any other war film. It's really just a bunch of dialogue. It's not even any remotely kind of war setting. Like, they're just. Yeah, I mean, it's just a serious kind of atmosphere, but it's like the dark comedy kind of comes out in the dialogue too. The character interactions and whatnot, awkward. Tarantino's always about the awkward depths within conversation. That's the best right there. And the dream way of talking it through. Yeah, I mean, Inglourious Basterds perhaps is one of the most violent. I mean, Django Unchained ups the violence even more. It's crazy. With slavery. I mean, the topic of slavery certainly can do that. But I mean, just being here in World War II era, it's extremely intense. It's extremely terrifying. It's not presented in a horror kind of sense. You're just kind of at wonder by it all, because that's the way all this evil can kind of feel. And this dominating force in man, it can feel like something that lives in a beast, an animal that lives in a person. It can feel terrifying. But again, it's like almost some of that. It's intense masculinity, But it's like in the end that can lead to heroism, in a way. And looking at what it's in the face of, ultimate evil. So yeah, that's Inglourious Basterds really is just. I mean, some of the greatest acting. All these actors are really perfect. Some of the best Brad Pitt moments, right up there, like the Tree of Life. Oh my God! And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, for that matter. Love Brad Pitt. And I feel like it's just an extremely intriguing film. I feel like I rewatched this recently, and I'm like, okay, this is a perfect experience. I feel like I'm sitting there. It feels like it's just a timeless feeling. I watch it, and it feels exactly the same. That's the best films communicate. It's like the same feeling you had when you watched it last time, but better. Because you know more about the characters, and you know more about the world, but you're still mystified by what it's ultimately getting at, in a way, in a certain kind of way. But it's just, yeah. It feels like it's just like a very original film the entire way through. I've never seen any sort of action or anything quite like this. It's about love and passion for film just as much. Really, that's kind of the language it has behind it. It's like this is the second strongest he's gone next to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just being his ultimate expression of why, a love letter to filmmaking. So, yeah, I really love and admire every frame of this film. I mean, it really is quite perfect. And I recommend it to. It's hard to say. I feel like I personally can't recommend this to everyone. It is harshly violent, and I don't know how a person could feel about this, getting into something. Because, again, it almost is a confession to juvenile, which is literally what I feel like shutting up about. So it's like, I don't know if I feel like recommending this film to just anybody. But I'll simply recommend Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think that's the same level of passion Quentin Tarantino. That's a little bit more, I think would be a little bit more of the relaxing shade. This is an intense shade of Quentin Tarantino. Maybe even the most borderline juvenile feeling. But I'll say, like, this is a side that, in the end, I have to defend because it's part of me, whether I want to admit it or not. So, and I think Quentin Tarantino knows that too, in a sense. I think he was definitely extremely challenged again by how intimidatingly good Paul Thomas Anderson is as a director. So this is like an interesting, I think, feeling of response to a lot of that feeling, almost like the intense, but it turns out to be, I think, an equally perfect film in the end. Even if I still personally, I don't even want to say anymore. Like, they just both feel like perfect films to me. I'm not going to compare it. Like, okay, so this is perfect in a slightly different kind of way. Every Blood's a little more of a subtle type of film. This is more of just like a abrasive, but in the end, I enjoyed that just as much because that took me through the same almost amount of scope and the same amount of like just intensity, suspense, and entertainment. And themes, philosophical themes. Like, that's the thing about, like, again, just kind of looking at a love for cinema in contrast with the face of death. Just look at how you want to react as a viewer. Like, do you want to cheer whenever they're killing the Nazis? No, you just want to sit back and just quietly take it in because it's tragic, because violence is a horrible thing. So, just to kind of, you just have to watch it unfold as it will. Take that in, and be, and just be thankful you don't have to be under that heat, if you are, and if you are, mad respect, mad power to you, because that's a lot, That's Inglourious Basterds. It's a perfect masterpiece. I recommend this film if you're up for an abrasively entertaining film, an abrasive amount of violence. Yeah. And if you're a fan of Quentin Tarantino, I certainly recommend this. But I would sooner watch Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs for getting into Quentin Tarantino, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.